Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to be here. This is my second year in a row at the Innovate Finance Global Summit, and I do genuinely think it is one of the most interesting and useful events in the calendar. I'm also extremely pleased to see and be part of this panel on the subject matter we're now talking about. I don't think it's controversial to say that this is a time of unprecedented volatility in the politics of the UK, but also in the politics of the US and of France and Germany and many other places. And there are lots of reasons for that, but a very large part of it is driven by a common sense of dissatisfaction that many people have with the economy, with their work, and with the opportunities that they feel are presented to them. And that's obviously a very wide debate. It covers wages, it covers demographics, it covers big political failures in the UK like the state of the housing market. But it also does definitely encapsulate what we're talking about in this session in relation to social mobility. The UK has a labour market that is characterised by the provision of a lot of extremely good, relatively well-paid jobs, at the same time as providing a lot of low-paid, insecure jobs at the other end of the scale. And in 2019, in the UK, whether you're one of the people accessing one of those better jobs still depends on too large an extent on where you live, on your gender, your class, your age, your ethnicity, and whether you have a disability. Just on that last point alone, fewer than half the people of working age in the UK who have a disability are in employment, fewer than half. And that's at a time of relatively high levels of employment overall. And we should all want to change that. I think most people in this sector do want to be a force for changing that. And I'd like to put just three things forward to the panel to provoke their discussions today. The first is transparency. Simple ideas like publicly advertising salaries on job adverts, having publicly disclosed salary bands for larger firms, stating whether the salary advertised is negotiable, and paying your interns. These have a huge impact on social mobility and on things like gender and ethnic minority pay gaps. And that is something entirely within the gift of businesses themselves. Secondly, part-time work. The data shows us if you go part-time in the UK, your earnings take a hit and you never really recover. And that's such a waste of talent and opportunity. This sector, with its insatiable appetite for skilled workers, could make a huge difference to that. Thirdly, I don't have time in these remarks to discuss Brexit, and believe me, I'm extremely grateful for that. But having spent most of this month canvassing in my seat in the local elections, which was a Leave seat, one thing I am always reminded of is the overwhelming discrepancy, no matter which way your personal view on the Brexit issue has gone. That discrepancy between the desire of a lot of Leave voters in a seat like mine that Brexit should mean basically a reduction in immigration, and how that contrasts with the rhetoric, the global Britain rhetoric of some of the Brexit leaders, is always on my mind. And for this sector, access to talent is clearly one of the biggest issues of all. And it does seem to me that that discrepancy is something that you should all be alert to. Personally, I think it would be extremely short-sighted to shut ourselves off from talent and in some way to pit social mobility for our young people against being open to immigration. But I can't promise you that my view will be the one that wins out on that. If you look at what has been trailed over the weekend in terms of potentially charging European students more for higher education after Brexit, there is clearly some possibility that access to talent will be restricted in some way after Brexit and put an even greater imperative behind this agenda. Finally, I want to highlight what I think is the biggest issue of all, and that is that this sector cannot succeed in being open and attractive to all if young people across the country don't really understand what it is. And for a lot of young people, terms like financial services or the city or even fintech don't have a lot of meaning. I'm always amazed by how many people just think the city is a reference to investment banking, often without even having much insight into what investment banking really is. I was at a school in my constituency a few months ago, and when I'm in a school I always ask young people what careers they're thinking of, and for the first time a young girl said to me that she was interested in a career in the city, and I was obviously very excited about that. I explained about my shadow role, and I asked what had prompted that interest. And she told me she loved watching the TV show Billions, which is good, but I did explain it's not an accurate depiction either. And in my job, I get to basically meet, to be honest, anyone I want: banks, insurers, regulators, asset managers, from the governor of the Bank of England to new fintech startups. And the things that are going on in the UK are genuinely exciting. But I want more people, especially our young people, to know more about that. So I'm extremely happy to be supporting Innovate Finance's FinTech in Schools programme alongside my counterpart, John Glenn MP, who is the current Economic Secretary to the Treasury, because it's exactly the sort of initiative I think we need more of. And I've already organised a session with Charlotte for a school in my constituency. We all have a responsibility to make financial services more representative of the public it serves, to tell them how we're going to make their lives better, but also to explain the good things that are already happening. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the panel on their ideas for how we achieve that. Thank you very much.